One thing Andrew ministered on is one of the ways you encourage yourself is to put yourself in remembrance of the good things that God has done. And I personally will be sharing more and more, just little tidbits through the services. I never wanted to be a church that always talked about the past. I was with some churches in my early days where the people got up and said, in 1940 we had a move of God, and I thought to myself, I don't want to do that. I want to have a move of God. I want to know God every day. I don't want to talk about something 20 years ago. But where I failed in that is you do need to remind yourself of what God has done to encourage yourself. You got to look back and say, oh my gosh, he has been faithful, hasn't he? He's been some great things. I look at Larry Wallace in his younger days, and because we actually knew a lot of the same people. We didn't know each other, but we knew a lot of the same people. And every time he walks through the doors, and every time I think about him, I'm just blown away. Because knowing all his friends, all my friends, we're all crazy, and there's every reason in the world for us not to be alive today. And we have a lot of our mutual friends that are dead. And it just blesses me to see Larry being faithful, loving God. And I look around this room and I think about our beginnings. When we came to Sturgis in 1983 or so, I told God, okay, he told me, he said, I want you to start a church in Sturgis. I said, I don't want to. I went to school here. It's a town that says us four and no more. I want to. And he says, Al, okay. Well, when somebody doesn't force you and manipulate you, it really twists you. It's like you're ready for the rebuttal. You're ready for the fight. And they said, okay. And God said, okay. And I go, wait a minute. And I came around and said, is that really what you want me to do? And he said, yeah. Well, I said, then we'll do it. I want to please you. But when we came, we started in a little glass shop called Sturgis Glass. Now, can you imagine this? Ray Raposa had remodeled a little bitty room in the front, wanted to serve the Lord. He'd been coming to our church in Vale. But the kids, to get to children's church, had to walk through the glass shop and then all across the street into this other little shed. And in the wintertime, they had just a little wood stove there. And Lisa, she was pregnant, and she'd huddle all the kids together and take them through the glass shop. Now, and this wasn't really a neat glass shop either. There's glass everywhere. It's like a danger zone, man. I mean, kids are always reaching up, grabbing. I mean, we had more opportunities for somebody to get slit. And then she got over there, and there was no restroom over there. And I thought it was the funniest thing. A little kid would say, I got to go to the bathroom. And Lisa said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Because she couldn't take one little kid and go back to the little bathroom we had over there and leave all the rest because it was right next to the highway. And they get out on the street. She just said, you don't have to go. And they didn't. Well, sometimes they did. And then she had to start a fire, and I started fires, and that was our beginning. And there was a lot of people that just said, I found out later, there's a lot of other pastors that said, he's just like a lot of guys. They'll come in, they won't last. And somebody got back to me, well, he's not going to make it. I go, well, that's great, then I don't have to do this. I didn't have anything to prove. I didn't have anything I wanted to do. I just wanted to serve the Lord. And Lisa and I just gave it all we had. And then the others came, and I said, one of the things I didn't want to have happen was some churches split and have all our people come from a church split. So what we did was we did a 3-day seminar on how to hear the voice of God, and just to kind of test the waters, and then out of that announced that we'd start. And you know who showed up the first Sunday? Mollers, Tiffany Oliver, and a bunch of people that just left a church split. And I said, this is exactly what I said we weren't going to do, God. But he just said, will you just love the people I bring to you? And there are some people that came that really didn't have the greatest reputations in the community. And when people come into their business, they would say some of the rudest things or some of the most, things that I would never, want them to say about Jesus, just challenge people. And I finally said, we need, some of these people are really hindering your kingdom. We kind of need to, should I pray them out? Or can I give you my takeout list? You ever get a takeout list, And God just said, once again, will you just pastor the people I bring to you? And forget about your reputation. And forget about what it looks like to me. He said, by the way, nobody can really do me harm. You ever hear people say, well, that's you're giving God a bad name? He's not worried about it. He's very secure in who he is. I mean, in the first days of the healing movements, it's like, well, people do some silly things. And, that's really giving God's healing movement a bad name. And I thought, that's like a little baby coming up and hitting me in the knee and thinking they're going to take me out. It ain't going to happen. And those are the early days of what God established in us, of just loving one another and not trying to be something. And then when we started, we were trying to find a building. I'll never forget, we started this building. Dwayne Grins was with me at the time. And after we started it was a big challenge because nobody'd loan us money. We did a church bond. But I remember Dwayne walked up. We just started the foundation. He said, John, no independent church in the Black Hills has ever made it through a building program. Yeah, I go, now why would you bring that up now? Well, I just want you to know nobody's ever made it. He said, there have been so many independent churches that tried to build a building, and every one of them collapsed and failed. Sometimes the people around you aren't much encouragement. But that actually encouraged me. Because I said, that's good, Dwayne, because I said, I have nothing to prove here. If this goes down, it goes down. I'm just doing my best to obey God. In the meantime, let's love the people. And let's don't worry about our reputation. And we were going to sell those church bonds, and Cliff Lynn went out and talked to some of his friends, and he just told him, you are not going to make it. Nobody's going to buy your bonds. Nobody wants to invest in that crazy church. That was some of the better noted people in the community. And he came back to me, and he gave me the report, and what Tammy was saying, and Alexis, you can take anything, and you could either say it's going to discourage you or it can encourage you. When they brought back those reports, it encouraged me. I said, well, good. If it happens, then it's really awesome. Then God really is with us. If it doesn't happen, we just missed another bullet. And it was a storm. We got ready to sell those church bonds and go in the community. And the very night we started, Lila, remember that? We had a blizzard for a week. I think it was in November, if I remember right. I mean, it just snowed and blizzard for a week. And you couldn't hardly get around. But, by the end of the week, we had $125,000 worth of bonds we were going to sell. And we decided not to sell $12,000 worth until later because we might not need them. And at the end of the week, we had $100,000 worth of bonds sold in a blizzard. And it was just like, I've talked to more people since then. They said, we did a church bond thing. It was the worst thing we've ever done. And I said, man, we sailed through this. And in the midst of that, God spoke to me very clearly and said, money will not be an issue. And by the way, the building that we built here, the land cost $35,000, if I remember right. 17 acres here. And that's another neat story. But we bought the land and built this building for a little over $100,000 and put new chairs in it. And be honest, I told my friend Bill Reed, he'd moved to California, he'd lived here all his life, and I told him that he was a contractor out there. And he finally came and saw the building like 5 years later, and he said, John, I was expecting a tar paper shack. You can't build anything for less than $20 a square foot. We did. We did. In the middle of winter, we did. I'm just telling you, God has been good to us. And where am I at today? I'm in the same place I was 30 years ago. I'm just saying, we got nothing to prove. Not really worried about what the community thinks of us, because one thing, I don't really know what they think of us. And you don't really know what people think of you. But you worry about it an awful lot. But if you and I could just stop and say, God, how do you see us? We'd start finding out the truth. Because how God sees you is truth. And He sees you as a joint heir with Him, even if you are in a major screw-up right now, even if the major screw-up is your fault. He sees you as one who has the mind of Christ, who has the Spirit of God inside of him, who's going to rule and reign with Him forever. And yeah, He knows that you're stumbling, but He also knows your destiny. In the millions of years to come, you will not be a screw-up. Now, isn't that kind of good news? Because, frankly, the last 30 years of my life are pretty... I mean, God's done some great things, but personally, gosh, I've made some blunders. That's enough time thinking about that. But He loves me. He loves you. And He loves the people that are out in your life and my life, and they don't have to come here. That's not a requirement for God to love them or for you to love them. Isn't that wonderful?